Welcome everyone to Reader Meet Writer. Tonight's program is Black Voices, a celebration of Black joy, and represents a partnership between Ingram and HarperCollins to bring you these wonderful authors and their books. I'm Linda Marie Barrett, the Executive Director of the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance. Our organization represents independent bookstores in 11 states across the South. Independent bookstores are community heroes during this ongoing pandemic. They work hard every day to get books into the hands of readers like you, whether you're shopping online or picking up curbside or visiting their stores. You'll be hearing about some great books tonight, and I know you'll want to purchase them for yourself or for some lucky young readers. So I hope you purchase them at one of our stores, and we're providing a link in the chat in the question and answer part for you to visit those stores for your books. Tonight, if you have a question for our authors, please use the Q&A button and make sure to mention your name and your hometown bookstore. Our moderator will ask questions during the conversation if time permits. Our panel tonight will be moderated by author Lisa Moore Ramée. Lisa wrote her first book in second grade. It took some time before she got around to writing her second one, the acclaimed A Good Kind of Trouble, which was published in spring 2019. Her newest book, Something to Say, came out this year, and Kirkus Review describes it as a timely, entertaining, unforgettable story about family, friendship, and finding your voice. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Lisa, to take it from here.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda Marie. I appreciate it. And I'm so happy to be here and to have an opportunity to chat with these wonderful authors. We don't have a lot of time tonight, and I have so many questions, and I know I won't get to all of them. And I also want to hopefully get to the audience questions as well. So what I want to do straight off the bat, since we're here to talk about Black joy, and you all three have written books about strong Black girls who, might not be having joy throughout the whole story that we find them in. But it is a celebration of just the different stories that we can tell and read about. So I'm hoping that you all can go around. I'll call on you so it's not awkward and you wonder like who should talk. But if you can tell us about your book and a little bit about your publishing cred. And then I want to hear about what you were like as a young Black girl. I think that would be fun for us to hear about. So Tanita, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Serena says, I feel like I had like I need to hold the book up.
Yes.
Serena says is about a girl named Serena St. John, who is really her goal in life is to be a content creator. She would like to be a good classroom reporter. Her school has sort of a morning announcements TV situation going, and she really wants to be a reporter. But she doesn't, she's auditioned, she's tried out, she's not quite good enough yet. So she's practicing. She's using her own little camera set up at home, and she's making these practice vlogs as she's sort of talking about her life and her day and everything going on with her in hopes of becoming good enough. Well, during the process of working out these vlogs, she starts actually putting a lot of her own personal life and the friendship struggles she's having and all of the classroom drama starts, turning up into her vlogs. And she's hesitant about putting them out there, but eventually she finds her voice and realizes that she's sort of there to tell herself her own story and to center her own sort of greatness in her own little narrative. I actually started writing Serena Says just on a happenstance of having seen there's a sort of YouTuber girl called The Name of JoJo's, this child with enormous bow on her head. I think she was on the Ellen show. She's very loud and out there. And I just kind of went on YouTube and just poked around because that was the era, it was a few years back, of everybody was making slime and they were filming themselves. And I thought, where are the Black girls doing this? And there were really, at that point, maybe one or two out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids in that age group who were doing things. And I thought, I remember, sort of in the very, very olden days with a tape recorder, making my own little world happen, and I just knew that there was somewhere out there, there were Black girls creating content. It might not have been, getting up on YouTube yet, but I knew that we were out there. And so that was kind of my impetus for writing Serena. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little bit of my story about who I was as my own, tape recorder is my own radio show, singing to myself, making commercials, writing narrative in the Sears catalog with, cartoon bubbles, we had it all there.
I love it. Okay, Paula, what about you?
So first of all, Tanita, I am also a tape recorder years old. So I totally get the reference. My book, as you all can see, my head getting lost in the background, that is the cover of my book, Turning Point. And I really like telling stories in dual point of view. I think part of it is because I like being able to hop from one head to the other. And so this story is told from the perspective of friends Monique and Rashida. And unlike my other books where it tends to be a direct line story about their friendships, this one is actually, kind of a parallel story because the two girls go away for the summer. And Monique goes away to a very elite ballet intensive while Rashida is what she considers stuck home. And she has a very religious aunt who now is happy that she's home because now she gets to go to all of the church things. So it's about the two of them and their journey over the summer, over these couple of weeks, and they get to know themselves in their kind of aloneness. Because although Mo is at the intensive with a friend, she just finds that she's so different from the, mostly white girls there, mostly very small, thin girls there. She's not shaped like them. So she's finding out about herself. And Rashida is starting to find out about herself as she begins a friendship with Mo's brother, but also was, again, stuck with her church friends and how she handles that. So the story is about them finding out about themselves, but also the impact that it has on their friendship. Because as we know, summer is usually when we bond the most. And so what happens when you're apart from your friends in the summer at that time when you're usually kind of, focused 100% on that friendship. I've been published since 2007. My original series was published back in 2007. I had a 5-book series. I tend to really enjoy exploring that age between 13 and 15. I think there are a lot of firsts going on in that time period, so I enjoy writing about it. Now, what I was like when I was younger is I was an avid reader. My cousin and I the way we would spend time together is we would sit with our books. We would usually get a pile of them and we would just sit and read together. We'd just be, and then that was still bonding for us. We would be reading our books. And sometimes we would argue because I was a fast reader and she didn't read as fast, and it would annoy her that I would finish my book so fast. I would inhale my books. And so it's really a pleasure for me to write the type of books that I absolutely would have loved as a young reader.
Yeah, amen to that. Janae, let's hear from you.
Hey everybody, I am Janae Marks. My book is From the Desk of Zoe Washington, which tells the story of 12-year-old Zoe, who is obsessed with baking. Her big dream is to compete on the Food Network's Kid Bake Challenge show. And then on her 12th birthday, she unexpectedly receives a letter from her dad, who she's actually never met because he's been in prison her whole life, And she decides to write back, and in getting to know him through their back and forth letters, she ends up finding out something pretty surprising, which is that he might be innocent of the crime. And so then it becomes somewhat of a mystery as she tries to uncover the truth about what happened to Marcus. And as for me, this is my debut middle grade novel, but I've been, pursuing publication for many years. I got an MFA in creative writing back in 2010. So my journey's been long, but yeah, as a kid, I was really into reading, but I was also really into like musical theater and Broadway and like singing and dancing and things like that. So yeah, I was definitely into that sort of thing as a kid, and also really loved contemporary stories in terms of reading about friendship. So that's definitely one of the things that I loved as a kid, and I love all of your guys' books as well, because it's definitely a big part of what we write about.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that Paula already touched on that I wanted to kind of spend a little bit more time with is the fact that all three of these books have this element of a friendship, and a friendship, I don't want to say gone wrong, because that's wrong, but a friendship that is in transition, one might say, or, there's some problems. I think in Zoe Washington, I think she's not like on speaking terms with her best friend. And Paula had some heavy lifting to do, because since she has two main characters, like showing, two different sides of this friendship puzzle. And then also, you, of course, Tanita, in your book, has this issue of, a friendship in jeopardy. So I wanted to have you each talk about kind of the importance of focusing not just on friendship, but also the challenges of friendship, and why you chose to include that. And this time we'll start with Paula.
I am a self-proclaimed friendship etiquette nut. And it's something that probably drove my daughters crazy. I have two daughters, 26 and 16. And as they grew up, I would always push them to, when they would have friendship issues, I would always say, well, you need to talk, you need to let them know how you feel, or, you need to work this out. And, of course, as an adult, that's easy for me to say, but it was because, to me, there are these friendship rules, they're unspoken, but one of them is that if we're truly friends, then I am able to, come to you and say something to you and get things off my chest. I'm not promising that the friendship is actually going to still stand after that, because we never know how someone may react. But I was always a proponent of it, and I would always sort of force them, to confront that. And so my books are always about those situations, and always seeing what happens if either you don't confront it, or if you do confront it. Like, I always want to be able to say, all right, so what happens once, we recognize there's a problem? And I really think that middle grade in particular is a great time to cover those kind of things, because it is when you're really thinking that friendship going bad or having a problem is the biggest crisis you'll ever face. So it's just important to me, for young readers to kind of see that everybody goes through it, so that they don't feel like it's the end of the world.
How about you, Tanae?
So I'm an only child, and so I feel like growing up, friendships were always like super important to me, because they were, what I had. Those are the relationships I had other than siblings, and I didn't have siblings. So yeah, I just feel like growing up, the relationships I had with other kids, whether they were good or bad, just had such a big impact on me. So yeah, I feel like every, story I write for this age group, it just makes so much sense to me to have them incorporate friendship stories, because when I was in middle school, my friends, it just meant so much, including when something was going wrong. So, it just had such a big impact if something went wrong with a friendship. So yeah, that was definitely why I wanted to incorporate a friendship, and I also show how things can be rocky sometimes, and how friendships change, especially when you're switching over from elementary school to middle school. Those friendships that you had that were close when you're younger often fizzle out when you get older. And so, yeah, I definitely wanted to explore that.
Tanita?
Yeah, everyone's answers really resonate with me. It's just so much the case. When I was in middle school, those were the worst years because I suddenly, you just sort of, when you're in elementary school, everybody kind of, you're low key just doing what the teacher says. And as the more you mature, the more importance friendships have. And I realized I really was just sort of a weird kid who wasn't quite like the other kids. I wasn't quite in step with what the other kids were doing. And it just, more often than not, I think I found myself trying really hard to be like everyone else and fully, there's that always that where you don't quite make it. And, I think some of I spent a lot of the time with one friend, just one good friend. That's just like an introvert thing anyway. We tend to have, a few good friends instead of the whole multitude. And I write from the perspective a lot of the time of a character having a few close friends, at what happens though when those friendships transition, when things start to happen. And I think I just want to sort of always be sort of writing about the self-reliance that you get from being a person who can shift with friendships, and you're not quite so brittle like I was in middle school, where if somebody doesn't speak to you, well, that's it. The sky, the sun has fallen right out of the sky, the planet has been plunged into darkness, and it'll never be good again. And I mean, I was that seriously dramatic person in middle school. And so for me, it's like when I wrote about Serena and JC, it's not as if there was really a point when they looked at each other and were like, well, you're not it anymore. But things change, and they change organically and gradually. Sometimes you're just not as close. And I kind of wish that I had had books when I was that age to say, hey, this is a normal thing. This is just not you that has suddenly turned into someone wrong. It's just that you grow out of friends sometimes. And I think that was probably the hardest thing for me to understand growing up, is that you do grow out of people. And not every friendship is going to be, Anne of Green Gables, and that you're writing to each other when you're, Marilla's age or whatever. So that was really hard for me. And I think I'd like to explore that a lot, because I didn't have that sort of friendship etiquette rules. I didn't understand. I didn't get that, that it was going to happen inevitably. So I think it's a very normalizing thing to keep saying in a variety of different ways, in a variety of different books, this too shall pass.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I really enjoyed, and it surprised me in Serena Says, that I think very often we read stories where, two friends have some type of breakup, and then, we see them get back together. It's like, oh, they have resolved the issue, which is really lovely, but not always, it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes, they just move on, in life, like you were just saying, sometimes we just move on. And I was so fascinated by the conversation that Serena has with her mom about that, and the fact that this is something we don't often see in a book of, kind of a mom saying, hey, that's life, like that, this is normal, this happens. I thought it was a really great message for young readers, so that they would know, like, oh, it's not me, if for some reason a friendship goes in a different direction than what we were expecting. One of the things that was very clear in Serena Says is her inability to say what she wanted to say to the people that she wanted to say them to. And in Zoe Washington, we have a character who, can't tell her mother the truth and is holding back. And then in Turning Point, we have a lot of characters who have some things going on that, sometimes we have people who want to say something, and then we have, a character who has to wonder, who is very comfortable speaking out, but then has to wonder, like, is that okay? Maybe I shouldn't speak out. So my next question for you all is to talk about that concept of speaking out, being able to kind of speak your truth, and how important that is, you know, particularly within the Black community, and whether or not that was like something that was very much on your mind as you were working on this, about how to talk about finding the strength to speak up when you need to. And this time we'll start with Janae.
Okay, this is like a tough question. So I feel like when I was writing, I didn't go into it saying, okay, I want to write a book about, you know, a girl who learns to speak up. I think it just kind of came through, you know, as I was writing, I realized, you know, that would be a part of the story. I knew that I wanted her to sort of be keeping things from her mom, just simply because I felt like it made sense that she may not be so sure that she'd be able to continue communicating with Marcus if her mom knew. So, but I think, I don't know, I think I was focusing more on just her learning more about the world and learning more about the realities, and like her, you know, how, like, and as she's trying to uncover the truth about Marcus, she's starting to learn how to speak up. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't something that I originally intended to write about. It's just, sometimes these things just come when you're writing. But yeah, I do feel like I'm happy that that is a theme that kind of came out in the writing process, because I do feel like it's important for young girls to know that their voice matters, and that, you know, especially at this age, like you can have your opinions, and they matter. What you are thinking about these bigger issues, you know, in the world matters, even if you are young, and even if sometimes, because, you know, they're living these experiences. So yeah, I love that it's part of the book now. But yeah, it's just interesting. It just kind of came out as I was developing her character.
Tanita?
For me, it was, you know, so many times I write and then later people ask me, you know, was this deliberate? And I'm like, yeah, sure. But it actually, this time though, I can say that I wanted to really talk about claiming your voice, not only as a girl, but as a Black girl in this sort of content creator world where it was largely other folk doing this. How do you stand up and say, this is something I want for myself too? And it was not something that Serena had come naturally to her. Oftentimes in the book, she looks to her best friend JC and says, well, JC's a leader. JC does this, she does that. That's all of this is her identity. But she did not have any inkling of that this could be her identity as well. And so for her to say, you know, what if I could do this? What if I could stand up and speak out and be this person who is not just a secret keeper of her own thoughts, but she could be also a person who is telling her truth. And I think that was a lot of it. It was going back and forth of all of the characters in the, you know, all together. There are things that are revealed when they shouldn't be. There are things that are a sort of a kept close to the chest when, you know, really it's just, we need to hear from you. And I think in part two, looking back at my time in middle school, of all of the muttering under my breath, the things that I did not say out loud, if I would have had the courage to say, hey, you know, this is who I am. If people see who you are, they can be your friend. But if you're going to continue to hide that, it makes it a little harder.
For sure. How about you, Paula?
So some people might say that because Monique is in this super kind of white space, super traditional space, that it's a fish out of water story, but it's not. It's more like Finding Nemo. He was a fish in new waters. He was trying to figure out, you know, what does he do in this aquarium as opposed to being in the open water. And Mo is sort of in that situation while her friend is home in a very familiar space, but navigating it differently. So what I really wanted to do when you talk about speaking your truth was I wanted to focus the lens on kind of the microaggressions that go on in ballet. I have a daughter who is a ballet dancer. She studies classical ballet. And the number of times that when people find out that she does ballet, even people in ballet says, oh, what, do you contemporary ballet? Because it is this assumption that the Black dancers want to do contemporary and modern. She's a classical ballet dancer. She knows all of them. In her spare time, that's what she loves to do. So I wanted to kind of honestly shine the light on some of the little things that go on in the ballet world that make, our brown dancers, feel alienated. And so Mo gets a lot of that. But it's also Mo calling people on it. Like, she's not afraid to call the people on it in the environment. And I wanted that so that people could see that the little small things they say are not necessarily as innocent as they think. And then with Rashida, I wanted to kind of show how rules and super religion can mold some people, and how when you have so many rules to follow, you're not sure what's right or wrong anymore. And so both of them are, kind of trying to stand in their truth of those situations. And it's important to me that it's important that the lens is seen from their perspective, so that maybe even as adults, we might step back a little bit and rethink some of the things that we do or say to the young people in our lives.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you all did a masterful job. And if I didn't say this at the beginning, let me just say, these are fantastic books. And the one question that we've gotten so far, audience question, is that someone asked if, before this is over, if you could all hold up the cover of your book again. So I just want to remind us before we sign off today that we make sure we do that, so that people can go out and buy these, because they will not regret it. So I'm wondering, obviously it's really hard to write a book, and as we all know, and oftentimes when we're writing, we have this very clear idea of our main character, and then we might end up being surprised by another character who is a secondary character who just kind of steals our heart. And I'm wondering if there's a person like that in this book for you, that either you just so enjoyed writing them, maybe it's someone you love to hate, I don't know, but talk about, who's your favorite secondary character in your book, Paula?
I am going to go with Mo's brother, Lenny. I don't even know if he's considered secondary, because he is a major part of the story arc. Nonetheless, because the story is told from the perspective of the girls, he, tends to be more of a secondary character. But I'm going to go with him because I do feel like he's one of these kind of kids who's stereotyped, and because he and Mo have brothers who are in jail, who are incarcerated. So there are a lot of assumptions that people make about him. And we see his shell soften a little bit as he and Rashida's friendship grows. And yet we know that something happens at the end of the book that, there are probably going to be people who, put him at blame and feel some kind of way about what happens at the end. But I think that I really like him as a character, because I do think that there's some growth there, because I do think that even though he's a little older, he's a year older than, look, I'm forgetting my own character. He's like
2 years older. He's 2 years older.
Thank you, Lisa. He's 2 years older, so you feel like he should know better. But, we forget that maybe sometimes you don't, even at his age, he didn't know better. He still didn't know how to act in the situation that they're put in at the end of the book.
Tanita, how about you? Do you have a special secondary character?
When you write an antagonist, you have to love them or they don't come out right. And I really learned to appreciate JC, even though you know, technically you want to look and say, oh no, we're all anti-JC, but the fact of the matter is number one, if there is no fault sometimes when a friendship ends and it's just a part of growing up, then we can't be really mad at somebody just for growing up, just for being interested in being friends with somebody else. But you know, Serena goes through this whole thing. Well, is it me? Is it I'm not Asian, I'm Black, and maybe, you know, I don't have, you know, a good bust like she does. I mean, she like goes through all the things it could be, because there's got to be some reason that her friend just isn't that into her anymore. But it's, you know, if there's no fault, we have to look at it from the other perspective and then say, you know, these things just happened. And I had the experience of having someone very close to me go through having a kidney transplant when they were in high school, and it is no picnic. It is no fun. You miss a lot of school. You miss all the drama. You are trying so hard to keep up with everything. You have this fear of missing out, but at the same time, you're in pain. You're, you know, woozy, and you're, you know, all the drugs. It's just, it is not a stroll. So when the times JC is angry, or she's moody, or she's too tired, or, you know, she takes an easy way out of having a friend who doesn't rely on her for everything. You know, Leilani is a go-getter, and, you know, let's do this, let's do that. And she's sort of dragging JC in her wake. And I think it, you know, it finally occurred to me as I'm writing them that, you know, poor JC, she's had a rough year, even as we are kind of, you know, I spent time kind of upset with her on, you know, Serena's behalf. But in point of fact, you know, it's a rough time on that side too. And, you know, it's hard to let somebody down and say, you know, we were great friends, and, you know, you were a friend for a time. And, you know, I think that they navigated it in the end as gracefully as they could. But, you know,
Yeah.
so I really learned to love JC, even though, you know, she
did Serena dirty. She
she
did.
did. She did. I mean, showing up twinning with somebody when you weren't, you know, and somebody's not expecting, that's real dirty. But, you know, it happened. Try to roll with it.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say it was going to be the mutant boy, like, which
Harrison, yeah.
I just loved
Harrison is
their interplay.
hilarious.
I just loved that. That was so funny to me. What about you, Janae?
I'm going to go with Zoe's grandmother, because I feel like that relationship ended up being really nice to explore. And yeah, she just ended up being a side character that I think I started out thinking like, okay, like she'll be like the adult figure sort of in the background as Zoe's navigating some of this grown-up type stuff. But then she ended up really being like a confidant, and like, you know, they baked and cooked together. And I don't know, I just feel like getting to see how their relationship, you know, getting to explore their relationship ends up being really fun. So I enjoyed her.
Yeah, you surprised me with that one too, like, because you know, so many times the grandmother is like the rule person, and it's like, no, this is the way. And it's like, oh, this grandmother is breaking the rules. And it's like, you know, the person that she is able to tell the truth to. And I liked that. I thought that was really original. As far as, I think that these books, they're not only just really great reads, but they're just very well crafted. You know, like, I, as a writer, was really paying attention to how you plotted these books out, and how, you know, there were things that happened that, you know, I found surprising. And, you know, it was just, none of them were kind of run-of-the-mill stories where you could just kind of predict where things were going to go. So I was hoping that you would take, you know, a minute or two to just talk a little bit about your process as a writer, and whether or not you outline, and whether you do or don't, like, do you have a really clear understanding or decision of where your book is going to end up? Do you see that end goal from the very beginning? I always just love hearing, you know, how things work for you, and maybe share with us maybe what was the most difficult scene to write, as long as it's not a huge spoiler. And let's see, we'll start with Tanita, because she looks like she has no idea what she's going to say.
Zoe.
Thanks for that. I was just thinking, Serena Says is my first book with HarperCollins, but it's my 5th book, I think. Yeah. And every time I think, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to outline, I'm going to be very methodical. And then I write an outline, and then we go off road pretty much from the first page. I don't know why. It's a thing I keep trying. But yeah, I'm a person who has a general idea, but specifics, my characters, people often talk about their characters surprising them, but honestly, I'll be writing along and I'll be thinking, okay, I know where we're going, and then a minor character will do something and we're off road again. So for me, probably the most difficult thing, as I said, this whole thing is working through the fact that some friendships simply have an age, a sort of a time ending, and then they're done. And that was, for me, is working through Serena's anger and her feelings and JC's anger, towards her. That was really difficult for me to walk through the times when they were clearly hurting each other so much, but it just was something that was just part of the process of having a friendship, and it, its time being over. And I think probably the worst thing, the most significant thing that people have said, oh, I cried when I read that part, was, just the unhappy surprise of looking up one day in school announcements and seeing that your alleged best friend is best friending with someone else. And it was a real wrench. And I mean, I think that probably for most people, there isn't a moment in your life when you can look at it and say, yep, that was right then, our friendship was over. But it was very clear that was, the door ended. And I think that was probably, without spoilers, that was, the moment. And that was hard.
Yeah, that was a tough one. What about you, Janae? I know part of this answer already.
Well, okay, so I like to outline. I've tried not outlining, and it just wasn't super successful for me. I feel like, at least, I don't necessarily have to have a super detailed outline, but I think just having like a certain sort of scenes plotted out, sort of almost like, there's like this 7-point plot structure that I like to follow, where they have like, it's basically 7 different points. It's kind of a shorter version of the Save the Cat like beat sheet thing. But yeah, so I like having at least like 7 beats to kind of go off of, and then I can kind of be more creative about what I'm filling in. And even then, it's like the outline will be, a sentence for each chapter or scene. And then you still have lots of work to do. Like, I'll get to a sentence where I'm like, okay, I have a sentence as an outline, but like, I still have to come up with like a whole, like, how does this happen? How do I get around it? So I do still allow myself lots of room to be creative in the moment. And definitely when it comes to character development, I'm not that great at coming up with a lot of stuff ahead of time. I like to explore character development while I'm writing. So that's that answer. And then now I'm forgetting the second part of the question.
Toughest scene to write.
Oh, hardest scene to write. Okay. I think the toughest part, well, the ending ended up like getting shifted around. Like, I had one ending and then we ended up changing it slightly when I had an editor. So it wasn't necessarily tough, but I think just figuring out how to end, like how to end a book like this was challenging. I don't know. I think the toughest parts probably were around like the case, trying to figure out how to navigate, writing, talking about this topic in a way that would be, make sense for Zoe being 12, and like, how would she learn about this stuff? And, I feel like just navigating that part of it. And also like the actual logistics of the case, like, was a huge puzzle for me, like figuring out, what Marcus was accused of, even though you only get like a little summary of it in the book, I had to like know all that stuff in my head. So like figuring out, what he would have been accused of, what actually would have happened, like if he was guilty, what would it, like, how could he have done it if he wasn't guilty, like all those different pieces to that. As she's trying to figure it out, you get some of those little snippets of the case. So yeah, that was definitely really hard too.
Yeah, well, you did it masterfully well. So
Yeah.
Paula, you can tell us two scenes when you get to that part, since you have 2 points of view.
Gee, thanks. So, okay, I'll start from the back end. How about that? The toughest scene, and it was like Janae, it wasn't just one, it was sort of a combo. It was for me bringing the girls together at the end. Most people know that my books are usually about the friendship itself. And Turning Point is one that's not the primary focal point. So because the girls were taking separate journeys, but were in and out of each other's journey, we see them texting each other to kind of keep that connection over the summer. We also see those text messages start to wear off, or where one person, kind of drops the message and the other person's like, hello. So, so we see that their friendship continues, but trying to tie it together in the end to decide now what's going to happen when we come back, because they both had like these very different things happen to them. So that was very tough. I struggled with that and lost a little bit of sleep, because it was the first time that I really, didn't have this kind of clear, how are we going to resolve this? Because it wasn't about their friendship really. Now, I am a pantser, 100%. I envy you, Janae. Even if I could write one sentence and build from it, I would love that. It would probably save me so much time, when I sit down to write, but I've never been able to do that. I have no idea what's going to happen until it happens. I just sort of know that my books are always very character driven. For anyone who's read any of my books, they're very character driven. So for me, it's always about this person and what they want and what's in their way. That's the whole book. And then I just kind of build from there.
It's interesting. One of the things that I really loved about Turning Point was how different these girls are. Like, they're best friends, but they're very different. But we 100% believe that they're best friends, even though they aren't alike. And I think, that's pretty typical. We think, oh, you're going to be just like the person that you're best friends with, but oftentimes that's not the case. Sometimes they have a strength that you are lacking, and that appeals to you. Yeah. I have not seen questions come into Q&A, so hopefully I'm not missing any. And I think we have time for maybe just one more question, which I have so many. I'm like going, oh, which is the one? So who would you say would be the person that, like, if you were imagining the reader that you were like, this is the person who would love this type of book, who would you say that person is? Or if someone is like looking for a book and you're like, if you're looking, like if you know someone like this would be the book for them. Janae?
Well, if people like mysteries, I feel like I was one of those things that I didn't actually go into it saying, oh, I'm going to write a mystery, but I kind of made sense, because the inspiration kind of behind the book was listening to like podcasts and stories of like these kind of crime investigating whether or not somebody was innocent, and, and it's a mystery, you don't know. So yeah, if people like mysteries, and I don't know if they like baking, we haven't talked about that, but if anybody who likes baking, who's obsessed like me with those baking competition shows, and if you're into, girls, with strong-willed girls, with strong opinions, yeah, I think Zoe's for you.
And Tanita?
If you are a reader who is maybe a type of person to stand on the sidelines and want to get involved in things, but not always sure how, I think that Serena might be for you, because as she finds her voice, so will the reader, hopefully.
And how about you, Paula?
So, I'm really big on Dr. Ruding Sims Bishop mirrors and windows concept. And so, it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to be reflected, in this book, then, for sure you are looking at young Black girls who are very active in, something, whether it's church, praise dance, choir, ballet. So, if you want to see yourself reflected because you are that person, then this book is for you. But if you want to mirror into, what it's like to be from a working class Black community, and perhaps what church culture is like for us, or if you want to see what it's like when we are put into, a very white space and how, we react because that culture is so different, then this, this is a good book for you.
And I want to go on the record of just saying, if you like a good book, with characters that will kind of just make you fall so much in love with them, all of these books are ones that you will so love. And so if you all have the book near you handy, if you could hold up your books again. Thank you for, now, Paula, we can't see yours because of your background, so I'm going to hold up yours.
Got it.
There it is. Okay.
I was trying to turn the background off while I'm holding it.
Thank you all so much. This was so much my pleasure to have the opportunity to talk with you today. And I so appreciate being invited to host this panel and get to know a little bit more about these books.
Thank you.
Linda Marie, is there any?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you all too tonight for presenting, and to thank the audience for supporting you and supporting our Southern independent bookstores. So we're hosting another event on December 3rd, another Black Voices event with authors who have written adult fiction and nonfiction books, and we'd love you to come back and join us then. But in the meantime, stay safe and keep reading, and you can purchase these books. I know you'll want to at one of the stores we included in the chat, a link to those stores. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.